Welcome to my channel, Ape and Hodl. This is an exclusive, awesome interview with the head of gaming at Mysten Labs. We talk about upcoming developments for the Sui Blockchain, new gaming partnerships, artificial intelligence, and most importantly, why the Sui Blockchain is superior and outperforms other layer ones such as Ethereum, Solana, Aptos, etc. Stay tuned. You are head of gaming partnerships at Mysten Labs. Mysten Labs is basically the organization behind building the Sui blockchain. And
Yeah,
could you go into basically what you do for Mysten Labs and how you are involved in the Sui blockchain?
yeah, of course. So start from the top. My name is Anthony Palma. As you mentioned, I'm the head of gaming partnerships for Mysten Labs, which is the initial contributor to the layer one blockchain suite. I lead all of our partnership efforts, both on the tooling front to make it as easy as possible for game studios to build on Sui, as well as to go out and find the great game developers that want to build with Web3 in mind into their gaming experiences. I come from about over a decade of industry experience in gaming. This is my first Web3 job, but prior to this, I was a partner at Griffin Gaming Partners as a VC, investing across the games ecosystem, and got to see some of the first real kind of Web3 native studios coming through with great developers behind them. I led the seed round in Shrapnel, for example. Got to know that team really well, and I got to know the landscape of Web3 gaming through the partners that we were working with there. It led me ultimately to Sui because I felt like what we were doing here was really trying to solve a lot of the user experience and scale issues that were being presented by the industry thus far, and helping it so that games can get to millions of people like they're supposed to without breaking the bank for developers or for players. So my goal here is to onboard as many great veteran game developers building great games into the ecosystem as possible, and work closely with our product and engineering teams to figure out the proper tooling we need, both first and third party, and make it very easy for them to build.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, Web3 gaming is, I think, going to be one of the largest like onboarding piece to bring in mass adoption to crypto. It's one of the kind of easiest utilities, I think, to see. So either from a blockchain perspective, or we could go from the gaming perspective, depending on how you view it. But I like to get into kind of comparing blockchains. And I think for the general viewer on YouTube, they're researching different blockchains. Sui's in the layer one, so they're kind of comparing to other layer ones. What would you say would be the value add or the reason why Sui outperforms its competitors, either from just a blockchain perspective or from gaming developers or building games?
Absolutely. I'll start at the top on just generally how it's outperforming and why it's different. So the easiest way I can explain this is that Sui is easy to think of as a version 3 of blockchain technology. Version 1 was Bitcoin, which was currency on chain. Version 2 was Ethereum, Solana, and the like, which is currency and the ability to execute code. Version 3 is Sui, which is currency, code execution, and a full object data model on chain. And what that means is that every item or asset that exists on Sui is inherently an object. So everything on Sui is an object. What this means is that things like in gaming, an asset itself, so a 2D image or a 3D asset, the metadata for that asset and the ownership history can all be encapsulated into a single object. And that object can then be moved around throughout the ecosystem. For the first time in blockchain, objects are aware of each other because of this object data model. So not only can one NFT know that another one exists, but it can actually own it, which is a new thing in the gaming, or in the Web3 gaming space, I should say. In gaming, it's pretty straightforward. You have your RPG character and all these different pieces of armor you attach or equip, right? But in Web3, it has historically been very difficult to equip items where maybe an object owns another object or an NFT owns another NFT. The object data model on Sui allows for things like objects to own other objects, but it also allows for us to know when an object is owned just by one person versus being touched by multiple different entities or smart contracts. And because of that, we have some unique fast pathing that we can do with single owner object transactions. For example, you changing your background on your screen there from blue to red. If you wanted to do that with an NFT, you're the only one touching it. So you don't need permission from the entire network to do that. It's yours. We know that because of the object data model. So what it ends up providing is additional functionality for games like objects owning other objects. We also have dynamic NFTs that can be updated in real time. So you could have a kill counter, for example, attached to a weapon that you're using in a game that just provides a cool statistic that's attached to the lifetime of that item, cool things like that. But it's also the key to all of our scalability. So being able to get to 300,000 TPS like we've been able to do today, and actually we're elastically scalable. We're the only chain that is elastically scalable up to theoretical infinite limits as we add more hardware to our validator network. It also gives us our incredibly fast end-to-end latency, where I think we're down to 380 milliseconds now for consensus, which is by far the market leader. And we do this incredibly cheap because we're able to get to scale without having issues with congestion. I think most of our gas fees are a tenth of a penny USD or less on average. So it puts us in a league of our own for performance, which is table stakes for games, really is a requirement, right? But it also gives us unique functionality that's very specific to games too.
Great. Yeah, there was like a couple things that came to me when you were saying that, and we got a little deep into the woods, but I think that's good. And so you were saying that you view Sui as almost like a third generation to, say, either Bitcoin, then Ethereum, Solana. So there's a narrative online that Sui is the Solana killer. How do you view this? Is it actually, do you see it as a competitor, or are you seeing Sui as like an add-on almost, or?
I mean, the easiest way to explain this is there really shouldn't be competitors yet in the market because the whole industry still needs to succeed in a lot of these verticals, especially in things like gaming, where we haven't reached the general consumer. We're still in the Web3 native gamer, right? The crypto gamer space, where people understand the tech. We as an industry still need to get to the point where we can all have a success that we can point to as to why Web3 matters in gaming, and then move forward together. And then we can focus on our different strengths and weaknesses. So Solana has a ton of strengths, by far the most compelling alt, right? If you consider Ethereum to not be an alt. They're in a really good place in terms of adoption. Their community is incredibly strong. We just have things that we do differently, like the object model that enables some different functionality. We have similar scale and speed and cost, which is great, but we have new and unique functionality that takes things a step further and allows us to do a little bit more with the interactions. But cool tech is only cool tech until somebody actually does something cool with it. Mm-hmm. So our goal is really to go out and find excellent partners that can help showcase the technology that we've built, just like Solana's done with their community. They've done a really, really good job on kind of the meme coin, the NFT side. Very much shows the strength of their ecosystem. And we'd love to be able to do the same in gaming.
So you did speak on this orientation model, object orientation versus what I researched, account orientation. Could you kind of explain in maybe a simpler way of like, how would that affect the user, or why it's a little complicated, I think, to understand. And if you're thinking from just like a Web3 user perspective, what value do they gain from being in an object orientation versus an account orientation?
Yeah, this is probably where I'm a bit out of my depth and should probably only speak to the object side of things. But
okay. Well, that's versus other layer ones, right? Like right. Solana. I'm just starting to learn about this object orientation versus account orientation model, but it seems like this is something that no one else is really doing. So, what exactly does that do for the Web3 user? What kind of like value? There was like specific weapons you were talking about, but do you know in kind of like a simpler way of why this is so special?
Yeah, I think the two things that I would say are the effect on the general user are going to be the speed and cost with which they can do anything that they want to do on chain. So you're able to do this incredibly cheaply on Sui and consistently cheaply. There's just really no such thing as congestion, right? Because of the way that we're hit to scale. We've got the 6,000 TPS in a day, I think, when people were doing inscriptions back in January, and the chain didn't break a sweat. So being able to do what you want without having to wait for congestion to go through or pay high gas fees, none of that exists on Sui, so you're able to kind of freely transact. So that's helpful from a user perspective, and that's thanks to the object model and the way that things are routed through the.
So it helps scalability.
Helps scalability a lot. And then the other thing that it helps is it gives more opportunities for developers to apply perceived value to items in their games or in their worlds. So there's an NFT collection, for example, called Prime Machines. And they have the full NFT on chain. It's a 4K image. It's fully on chain because our storage is really cheap. Then they allowed you to color it over time with the airdrop that they did of their token. And so you could essentially dynamically update your NFT over time without having to do any burning and reminting. You never lost control of your NFT, but you could choose to update it if you wanted to. You could take the risk, whether it was going to be cool colored or whether it was better black and white. You had that ability to decide. And so there's these unique user situations that are popping up with simple implementations like that, or more complex ones, like I mentioned with gaming, where you could have, a sword or a weapon that has different attributes that upgrade over time because you've used it a certain amount of times, or you've killed a certain amount of bosses, or whatever it is. It's perceived value of these items, where if you were to list a sword in the store that had 0 kills next to the exact same sword that had 1,000 kills, 1,000 kill sword is probably going to carry a little bit more weight to the general user. Not that there's any reason for it to, other than it's cool that it has 1,000 kills. But that matters in gaming, right? Most people in free-to-play games are transacting because they want to look cool in the games that they play. And so it's a really unique way to add perceived value to items without having to do a bunch of burning and reminting or on and off-chain syncing. And a lot of what Sui is doing is not reinventing the wheel so much as it's making it a lot smoother and rounder to be able to roll the way it was meant to roll for on-chain activity.
Okay, yeah. So it essentially makes NFTs kind of more customizable, gives the developers more options of specific things they want to either attach to NFTs or in-game assets, things like this. Yeah, you were talking. I mean, a big thing with Sui is this handheld console that I guess is in talk of coming out. I think what I hear is next year. Yeah, could you speak more to what this is going to look like? What kind, is it going to be purely from Web3 developers? Are you going to try and get partnerships with like major gaming companies or Sony, Xbox, such and such?
Excellent questions. So in general, the Sui Play is a first-party device that we're working on in partnership with a company called Playtron. They're an operating system company that we partnered with actually a while ago, and we've been cooking this up in the shadows for a bit. But they're a handheld gaming operating system. So if you've seen the Sui Play, it's basically like the shape of a Steam Deck or the Asus, what's that called? The Rogue Ally, I think, or I can't remember the name of it. But these handhelds that are coming out that look like Steam Decks or Nintendo Switches, but it'll run a Linux-based operating system that these people at Playtron built. They're very sophisticated, and so it can run a number of types of games. So it'll be able to run Sui-powered games, which is great. And a lot of our partner games will be announced over the next 12 months or so. Starting next month, I believe, we'll begin announcing partners that are launching their games on Sui Play. You can imagine there will be some cool integrations and perks and things like that for people that own Sui Play devices for these games, because we're working with both groups. But the device will also be able to play any game that can run on Linux, which is, as you know, the Steam Deck is a Linux device. And so the vast majority of Steam games will run on the device as well. And they're working on integrations with Epic Game Store and others as well. So it's going to be a fully fledged gaming device that just happens to also be powered by Sui in a way that is additive to the player experience or the owner experience of the device. So if you like handheld gaming, it'll be great. It'll allow you to have essentially like a Sui powered wallet at the OS account level of the operating system. So imagine like your Windows ID is actually a wallet, and all of the games that touch it will be able to connect to that wallet. So there's some unique things we can do with the Sui powered games. There's also some things that we're tinkering with that we might be able to do with off-chain games in terms of just rewarding people for engaging in the ecosystem. But in general, it's just going to be a great, competitive device that will come out in the handheld market with our partners at Playtron, and it'll have some very unique Sui specific features.
So besides it just sounding pretty awesome and great for like actual real world adoption, I'm always looking at what creates demand for the native token and for people who are buying these things. I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, we're most people are trying to make money in holding these coins, buying these coins, trading them. Do you know how that's going to affect like the underlying demand for the Sui token with this console?
So I don't think I'm allowed to speak about token price or the way that we'll be able to use these things, as much as I'd love to talk about certain things on that front. But in general, this is just one of the many devices or many products, I should say, that we're putting out. It's a first party thing that we're excited about. We'll have a ton of incentives attached to it that'll be related to the partners that are launching with it. And so you can imagine you'll get special benefits for having a Sui Play device that also uses the games if you also play the games that we're partnered with.
Got it. Yeah, I understand. Maybe from kind of a basic way, then it'll be built on the Sui blockchain. So like usage and things that are happening on this console will show usage and transactions and such on the Sui blockchain.
Yeah, correct. And you could think of this as a kind of a parallel to what Solana did with the Solana phone, where we want to reward holders of it directly or indirectly, for participating in the ecosystem and being able to get behind this. It'll also just be a cool gaming device in general, because it'll be able to play basically everything, not just Sui games. But you're right, the Sui integration at the OS level on your operating system account will allow for some really unique integrations that make for a cooler player experience, that also will benefit the chain. We'll be recording a lot of cool transactions for the games that are on the device and in general activity that you do on the device.
And you mentioned earlier, I believe you mentioned a proof of elasticity. I read something about proof of elasticity and pilot fish. Do you know much about this, or can you speak to this, or what proof of elasticity means?
I don't actually on those
Okay.
fronts. So yeah, my specialty is, like I said, I come from the gaming world, not the Web3 world. So some of this stuff even escapes me. But what I mentioned, elasticity, what I meant was we're the first elastically scalable chain, which means that right now our TPS is at about 300,000, right? Like that's the max that we could theoretically hit. We did that when we launched in mainnet back in May of last year. But if we wanted to onboard like 10 of the biggest AAA game developers in the world, and they were going to push millions of transactions per second, all we have to do is add more hardware to the validator network, and then we're able to theoretically process more transactions. So we are the first chain that's able to do that, to my knowledge. And so elastic scalability really hasn't been a thing before. There used to have to be upgrades to the network and things like that, but we don't have to do network upgrades per se. We can just add more hardware to the validator set, and it allows us to scale up to meet the demands of the network. That's why you don't see any layer 2s on Sui.
Okay. I read that ByteDance is doing a partnership with Sui for gaming, SocialFi. I believe that's like the kind of the parent company behind TikTok. Do you know about what that partnership means for Sui?
It's still in the early phases. We're very excited about the things that we're working on there. I actually have a counterpart in APAC that sits in Seoul that works very closely on these deals. He used to work at ByteDance. His name's Derek. So he is the one that led that deal and led a lot of the effort there. I think we're still being relatively tight-lipped about what we're doing together, but there's a press release with some high-level things that we could touch on. It's just an exciting one that we haven't really spoken too publicly about yet, whereas other things are coming out of Korea, like NHN, we're talking about pretty publicly.
So, okay, well, could you speak to what that is? I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, of course. So in the West, they're not very known, but NHN is one of the largest game makers in South Korea. They are a public company. They make social casino games largely. They've made a bunch of stuff over the past, but their success has been in social casino. And if you don't know much about social casino, it's gambling, but with fake coins instead of with real money. So when you go to a poker table, you're betting gems instead of actual dollars, something like that. So they have a slot machine game that they're coming out with called Pebble City. They also have the Pebble platform that does some things off chain and allows you to do some cool, more Web3 native things. But for the general gamers that are coming into their games, because this is their first real Web3 enabled game, people are going to be onboarded into our ecosystem very seamlessly. They'll be using kind of abstracted wallets that allow people to onboard into Sui without really knowing that they're in it. They'll be able to earn pieces of slot machines and things of that nature as they're playing through the game that end up being mintable as NFTs. And those will be upgradable over time so they can be used in the game to earn more of this gem currency or whatever I think they end up using as their soft currency. It'll be a way to engage players more in kind of a metagame experience because they're earning pieces of things that help improve their game experience by being dedicated players. It's almost like a loyalty system inside the game, which is very similar to casinos, right, with the loyalty programs they have. So they'll be launching in the coming couple of months. They've been working very diligently over the last year and a half or so. And it's going to be really exciting because when their games work, they have hundreds of thousands of players, daily players. And so we're quite excited about all the progress they've made, and we're looking forward to their launch so we can see how things are going at scale on Sui.
Nice. Yeah. Hopefully that onboards a lot of users and activity. I like to talk to, in all my interviews, I like to speak to artificial intelligence and Web3. And do you have any knowledge or thoughts or exactly kind of how Sui plans on implicating artificial intelligence? Is there any developments happening with that, or does Sui have like a mission of how it wants to use artificial intelligence?
I can say with confidence that we've been poking around for quite a while in the space. A lot of our founding team are some of the smartest researchers on the planet in things like AI, ML models, and obviously on cryptography and blockchain. So there are several things that I think we're looking at in terms of driving new efficiencies on chain. Um, Nothing that we've announced yet, but we do have partnerships with folks that are working very closely in the AI space, and we'll be doing some interesting things with them, like Google. We announced our partnership with Google. Largely, their main focus is AI and ML, as you can imagine now at the moment. And we have partners, for example, that are thinking about doing things like giving your NFTs personalities based on a natural language model that's powered in the background, and it learns from you as a player as you're interacting with your NFT, so that it becomes more personalized and it's more interesting to you. Almost like NPCs in games, where you talk to them enough, they start to learn things about you. It's very unique in the way that I think they'll implement that. So there will be some efficiency drivers that are AI powered on the back end that people may never even know about on our side. And then there's more consumer facing things like the personalities that I mentioned that will definitely benefit from AI and will help train the models even better for a more personalized experience.
So that would be essentially like attaching almost like a large language model to an NFT. So the NFT itself is like is kind of learning or changing, I guess, and being able to interact with. And
Yeah, it's like it develops its personality from interacting with you, right? So if you've ever used any of like the AI companion apps where you can have like an AI friend that you talk to, they get to know you over time. They get to know things you like and don't like. They ask you questions, and they kind of behave differently based on how you treat them. So you'd be able to do the same thing with NFT characters in games if you wanted to, for example. We've got a few potential and/or existing partners that are tinkering with things like that using either Google's tech or some of their own LLM models that they've been working on.
dang, that'd be great. That sounds trippy. So Sui is coded or uses Move as a smart contract language, I guess, or programming language. Have you noticed? Because like I think I read that it was based on Rust. So can developers who know Rust easily code and Move? Or because when I look at blockchains and I think, okay, do developers need to learn an entire new language to build something on top of Sui? Or like how does Sui have plans to decrease the paths of resistance for developers to code in languages that they already know?
Yeah, of course. So this is a great point. There's a few things I can touch on here. The first is you're right. It's Rust based, I think is an easy way to say it. And so if you're familiar with Rust, you can more easily transition into the Move ecosystem. Move is just a more object oriented, more human readable language. So it's easier to kind of get up and running and very quickly. But because we know that we're asking people to learn a new language, and Aptos uses Move, and I think a couple of ecosystems like Solana are considering it too, Movement Labs as well. Because we know we're still asking people to learn a new language, we have a solutions engineering team of I think 30 or so globally now that help people get up to speed on everything they need to know and Move, and then specifically what they can do on Sui with Move as well, like the object model. So we're very helpful in getting people up and running. We will even go so far as to write some smart contracts for folks as kind of their understanding the language, but we take a teach a man to fish approach where we want to make sure they understand what they can do so they can do their own updates to smart contracts in the future. And then the third piece is that we do want to make it as easy as possible for people to onboard without having to go down the road of learning multiple languages to support multiple chains or to move over to our chain. So we're working with middleware partners as well that abstract away some of this learning process to make it easy to do things like minting NFTs, transferring them, creating a marketplace, all of the basics that you'd want to be able to do without bespoke custom smart contracts. These middleware providers are trying to make it easier to do directly in game engines, for example, for gaming. So you wouldn't have to go and learn an entire new language and learn how to deploy smart contracts and get them audited. You might be able to just work with these middleware partners to build what you want to build and deploy it on Sui. So it'll be an easy and different approach where you don't have to learn more. You may have to pay the middleware provider for that premium, but other than that, it's a new path for people to be able to get in and deploy what they want to deploy.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I feel like for developers, like, whatever's easiest and best, I guess, if there's all these value adds to building on Sui versus another blockchain, then maybe it's worth learning new things about a language. But like the broader, like I just interviewed a guy from Algorand, and they just released that you're able to like code in Python. And I kind of wonder if like most layer ones are going to start moving towards using like the broader, like the more commonly known coding languages, or are most Web3 blockchains like going to stick with these smart contract languages?
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, what would be good for the industry is that we start with robust but complex. So being able to leverage the full strength of the blockchain probably means writing your own smart contracts for now. But you'll be able to do everything you want to do, all the different features you want to touch, the first party and third party products we have, like ZK Login and Stashed and all these other wallet based things, as well as just like dynamic and nestable NFTs. That'll probably be through smart contracts for now. But over time, we'd like to make it as easy as possible for even a solo builder to go into Unity, download an SDK or a middleware provider's SDK, and be able to just start coding in JavaScript or in C# and be able to make calls to the chain or to the smart contracts that this middleware provider deploys on their behalf, so that all they're doing is writing in the scripting language that they know. So that's where we'd like to get. But for now, there's so few people building in the space, especially in a down market. We're just coming out of a bear, and who knows what's going to happen now. We got to wait for rate cuts in the U.S., right? So we're just sitting here hoping that we don't tank again. But it means that the number of builders is small, and so we can focus really heavily on bespoke solutions and work on the longer, more robust solutions for any builder over time.
You mentioned Aptos, and the founders of Aptos, the founders of Sui, I guess both have connections and come from Meta essentially. And I think in the crypto space, there's a narrative of like Sui versus Aptos, or how do you guys view Aptos? And could you kind of speak to what differentiates Sui from the Aptos blockchain?
Yeah, of course. Aptos is a great chain, another very scalable, high performance blockchain. The teams do come from the same place. I think the major difference from a tech perspective is Aptos forked the LibraDM project that they were working on at Facebook or Meta. So they took the existing technology that they had built as a team there and deployed that. And then Sui was built from the ground up with this new object model in mind. So we are more of a kind of from scratch solution, whereas the team had at Aptos had already worked in the environment that they were used to, and so that's what they deployed. Both have their strengths and weaknesses, and I'm not a big fan of chain competition because we still have so much to prove as an industry. So we do our best to be supportive of all chains in the ecosystem. So the Sui versus Aptos thing is, I think, fun for people that want to choose one side or the other and try to stick up for them. But in general, we all still need big wins with mainstream consumer partners to be able to advance as an industry.
What do you think as a whole for the industry is its like biggest resistance to being accepted as like a mainstream product and service, and how do you see like what's stopping crypto from being bigger, I guess, or to this point where you're talking about?
By far for me, it's the onboarding friction for new people that have never experienced Web3 before. And if you're in the US, I don't know the last time you tried to set up a wallet and just buy crypto with fiat. It's impossible in the US. Credit card providers will reject MoonPay. You have to go through KYC. What is that? Right? Like there's all these friction points for getting somebody into the Web3 ecosystem. And you're seeing chains like ours and Immutable and others that are trying to build products that make the onboarding experience fully abstracted. So you don't have to worry about, a Magic Link's another one, right? You don't have to worry about going through KYC to get a wallet set up. You essentially can just set up your wallet in a couple of clicks, sign in with Google, sign in with Twitch, whatever you want to do to get up and running. But there's still all these hurdles of like gas fee sponsoring, and what is a gas fee, and how does this affect the marketplace? And so it's a combination of making it easier for developers to onboard people into their experiences, but then also these experiences actually appealing to the masses. For example, in gaming, gamers don't want to play a game to make money. Like the general gamer is not playing a game to make money. They're playing a game to have fun and hang out with their friends. And so if I tell a gamer, you should come play this game because you can make money, they're like, I don't care. Is it fun? Why would I hang out there instead of in Fortnite or wherever I'm spending time with my friends? And largely that question has not been answered by a good Web3 powered game yet. And you hear me saying Web3 powered game because I don't actually like the term crypto gaming or Web3 gaming. They're just games if they're done correctly. And we haven't seen a major launch yet at scale. And so I think onboarding is one important piece so that it's as easy as possible to get people into Web3 and let them benefit from player ownership. But then the experience that developers need to build as well is coming. So in my opinion, in the next 12 months, we'll see the first real hit games that come out in the Web3 space where people might not even know that they're powered by Web3.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
and we're in good
want
shape.
you want like incredible games that are really fun, or in anything like, or in social media, like they might come the projects building a Web3 social media platform. I'm sure they're trying to give paid incentives, things like this. Or there's these pay to play or play to earn games. But ideally would be kind of both, right? It would be a game that you love and it's super fun and you'd play it anyways, but maybe there's an incentive that you can earn money, or you can build a marketplace, or you can build an ecosystem, or take your assets from that game to another game, or use these things that the blockchain would make it possible for using. So it's kind of like, to me, that would be the dream scenario, is that the game's super awesome and I'd play it, but then maybe I can actually earn, it's a decentralized asset model of not just this single entity making all the money, owning everything, and you're just kind of using it for fun, but that like people can own a part of the ecosystem in the game itself.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's a very interesting thing where gamers are already used to this paradigm, right? There are games like CS:GO or Counter-Strike, CS2, PUBG, and a few others where there are skins marketplaces. They're just attached to Steam right now, the Steam community marketplace. People, and myself included, will play those games. And it's not that I'm looking to make money per se, but if I'm playing the game consistently because I like it, and then I end up with like 20 skins that I don't really care about because I've been earning them as I've been playing, I can sell them on the marketplace. And it's not like I'm going to end up with thousands of dollars unless I get really lucky in literally gambling for crates in Counter-Strike. But for the most part, I'll end up with things that are worth like 3 cents, 5 cents, 10, 20, 50 cents, maybe a couple dollars from time to time. And so what I end up with is $5 to $10 in my account at any given time. In tier one country, or US, Europe, places like that, for the most part, we're not going to go to the trouble of cashing out $5. What we will do is reinvest it back into the game, because now it feels like a discount to a future purchase. So in PUBG, for example, I sold enough skins to have $7 in my account. This was like 2017, I think. I hadn't really been microtransacting in AAA games yet. It wasn't on my radar to do that. And then I was like, oh, but this thing that I want is only $10. So I really only have to pay $3 because I have 7 in my account already from selling skins. And so I paid it, and I converted into a payer. And so that is a major KPI that like VCs and all of these companies track, is what's their payer conversion rate. And I can tell you directly that ownership of assets is going to contribute directly to payer conversion, which means more people will be participating in the ecosystem and generally benefiting from being able to own their assets. That's when Web3 is really going to start to grab people, because the game is fun first and foremost. They're genuinely enjoying playing it. And here's now this new extra thing that they can do in the game by being able to buy, sell, trade, transfer skins.
Yeah.
The last thing I can say on this front too is the reason that blockchain is important here is, number one, ease to cash out if you want to, or to transfer it between different games like you mentioned. But also it's easy for players to be able to take what they have inside these experiences and figure out how they want to spend it. Do they want to reinvest it back into the game itself? Do they want to transfer the asset out and hang it on their wall as a digital picture frame? And they have the freedom to really do what they want with these experiences without having to get an education on what Web3 is. And so I think that mass adoption is really coming. We just need the first game that really gets people to stick around and enjoy it. And use things like what we have, it's called Sui Kiosk. It's a standard that has a bunch, it's almost like our NFT standard, but it has a bunch of functionality like a shared liquidity layer, so that if I list an asset for sale in the game, because I'm only ever playing the game as a largely Web2 player, Web3 users can see that same asset that's listed in the in-game marketplace on every other marketplace externally that uses Sui Kiosk. And so basically I'm able to list my asset on NFT marketplaces without knowing they exist. Which means it'll likely sell better. And so It's beneficial, like you said, for the Web3 ecosystem who cares to speculate and trade. And it's also beneficial for the players who probably are going to sell their items faster because other people outside the game can see it.
Yeah, it needs to just be easy.
A lot of benefits.
You want it to just be easy. You want to be able to just like sell this item, and there's basically one place people can go to buy, trade NFTs, whatever, from games or not from games. In general, I think that the Web3 space, it does need to just be easier in general and more not transparent, but like, yeah, that the user doesn't see the blockchain or have to do. I don't know about this world where we're going to have less KYC. I feel like we're definitely moving towards everything being KYC.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that if for developers and builders and things, if there's clarity and regulation, and even if people do have to do KYC, as long as you're not doing something illegal, then it's not that huge of, I don't think it's going to be that huge of a problem. It's going to be better for the space overall than companies not building in the United States because they're worried about getting sued by the SEC.
Yeah, exactly. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to build what they want to build and really to be able to provide the user experience that they want. So if they want people to go through KYC, that's fine. We can provide that. But if they want people to get a self-custodial address set up with the click of a sign in with Google button, we have that too.
Yeah.
It's really important that both exist. And I didn't mean to disparage, play to earn games or kind of Web3 gaming in general and say that we need to focus on larger games. We still need great, play to earn and or just like Web3 native game experiences to give people things to do in the ecosystems. People get excited about their chains because there's something to do with their tokens and they want to, be maxis and have something constantly to do with their assets. Web3 games give that ability to do something fun with your assets and get involved and speculate and do all these fun things that we need. The Web2 games that integrate Web3 for more abstracted onboarding will bring more people into the ecosystem, which is great. So they both serve very complementary roles. One is to entertain our Web3 natives, and the other is to onboard more people into what hopefully will become a Web3 native mindset.
I feel like there's got to be quite a bit of resistance for the traditional gaming companies to want to make digital ownership, because essentially they own everything and they're getting all the money. They get 100% of the profits of all the skins that you buy, and saying, oh, well, actually you could take that skin and take it out of our game when essentially you're buying nothing. It's not like a huge value add, but I think it is short-sighted. And I think overall what's best for the consumer and what's best for the gamer, what's best for the retail will, if you increase user size, and even if they're taking a percentage of those sales or percentage of the marketplace, I think it's going to be an overall win. And eventually the people are just trying to hold on to everything. I don't see that being the future, but I feel like probably there's a big resistance with the massive gaming companies to want to give up control, power, centralization.
And it depends on who you're talking to. So in the West, that's very much true. Western AAAs are usually the slowest to adopt new either technologies or monetization paradigms, if we want to call it that, because they don't have to. They can let smaller studios innovate, and they can let the East innovate. MapleStory, for example, was one of the first free-to-play games 20 years ago. And then I don't think we saw free-to-play take off in the US until 2010. Right? There were some games before that, but like mainstream AAA developers didn't start using free-to-play as a model until maybe 2012. So there's a big gap between when these AAAs in the West start to pick up things like this. But there are plenty that are tinkering. Ubisoft has announced a few things. EA announced a partnership with Nike, I think, for Swoosh and .swoosh. So like they're tinkering. They just don't want to disrupt the model that they have working now. And so they'll wait for somebody else to prove it out to them. So we're in a spot where we as an industry still need to prove it, that integrating Web3 is overall better for your KPIs as a developer. And therefore it's better for your players because they're sticking around more, doing more, and ultimately transacting more in the ecosystem. The counter that I like to give to the question of like, with two things, one is interoperability and the other is losing their sales to a secondary market. On interoperability, I'm actually not sold that it's going to work yet in multiple ecosystems until we see a proof point. So I'm on the side of the AAA developers on this front. I think it'll be great for inside of somebody's own ecosystem. So like inside the EA ecosystem, if you could take your avatar from Madden to Battlefield to whatever, right? If you could do that, cool. It doesn't cost them anything. It allows you to keep your character progressing. It's probably really neat for them to keep you in their ecosystem. But the second that you say, hey, I'd like to be able to take my EA character to an Activision game, they're like, whoa. Activision's like, am I losing a sale? What's happening here? And so they're not incentivized to allow people to bring their assets in. So interoperability isn't a tech issue, it's a business issue that can be solved, but hasn't been. I think we'll see interoperability in closed ecosystems for a while until somebody figures it out. And then the second piece of this, on the secondary market front, the data point that I'll be very interested to see how it plays out is, does a secondary market increase overall revenue because people are able to trade existing assets that were previously only being monetized once, primary point of sale? And actually, we saw our first proof point of this with NFL Rivals maybe a week or two ago from the team at Mythical. They put out an announcement saying they got a 50% lift in overall revenue from turning on a secondary marketplace. And that secondary marketplace is kind of a messy user experience because they're abiding by the rules on iOS and Android, which means they have to do it off platform. So even though it's not a clean in-game experience, they saw a 50% lift in revenue from turning on secondary transactions, which is huge. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see proof points like that on the business side. But in my mind, it also takes these free-to-play studios off the content treadmill. They constantly have to put out new skins for you to buy on like a daily basis so that they can keep you purchasing. But if they can monetize skins over and over again, it means they don't have to produce as much. So my thesis is it'll be helpful overall for these skins-based economies and free-to-play games to help them continue to monetize content without having to churn out a bajillion different costumes a week.
Yeah, it's passive. It's something that's already been built and created in there, and they're just taking a cut every time it exchanges hands, basically, which is like a great. I mean, that's what exchanges do. It's what credit cards do. It's what banks do. It's a great business model. I think it makes sense.
Exactly.
We're almost wrapping up here. I think so. I think in kind of finalizing, Sui seems like the tech is incredible. Seems like people are super psyched on the tech. And I don't know how much you can speak to this, but I got to like bring it up because it's something that I keep seeing in Reddit. I see it on the internet, and that's basically the tokenomics structure of Sui, the Sui token, and basically the like amount of inflation to the Sui token in kind of a short period of time. I think by the end of the year, it's going to inflate by 500 million tokens, which would essentially come to like almost $500 million. And then also there's been talk of this like lack of transparency from the Sui Foundation of their foundation wallets. Is there like anything that you can kind of say to this narrative or to what that means or why that's happening?
Yeah, like as the games guy, I can't really speak to any of this, but what I can say is that we've put out several blog posts about transparency. All of our wallets, you can go and look at all of this info. It's very public. We also are very public about our tokenomics. They're on every one of our explorers. You can see the release schedules. And although 500 million tokens sounds like a lot, we have 10 billion in total supply. And so it's a really slow, gradual increase over time. The major cliff happened last month in May that I think everybody was worried about. And thankfully it was a big nothing burger in terms of effective price. So we're in a good spot in terms of just being able to continue scaling the ecosystem. I can't really speak to the tokenomics, otherwise they would kill me for doing that as the gaming guy, but we have been very transparent. We've made several posts about this. There's, we do our best to address these things head on because there's nothing to hide. The company's doing very well. We're trying to be very open and transparent about this. We don't want to feel like there's any ill will because it's nice to have adults in the room running the company. There's a lot of very, very competent people at the head of this company. And we're trying to not only do things by the book, but sometimes we're helping write the book in the way that these things should be done in a compliant manner. So we're an open book, but unfortunately I'm not the one to be able to read it for you.
Yeah, no, I kind of assumed. I just felt like on like kind of behalf of the crypto community space, when I'm speaking to someone from the company, I wanted to kind of like drill you guys a little bit. But I think that it seems very optimistic. It seems like what you guys are doing is awesome. I love that. I think it seems like you're kind of focused targeting on Asia a lot, which is like I'm sure is a massive market. And I'm excited to see, what happens in this bull market. And then hopefully, I think what happens through, in the next like 4 years, where you guys are at and where we're at as a whole in the crypto space is going to be really exciting.
We're in exciting times for sure. We're going to see proof points in my industry, in particular in gaming. We've got plenty of positive indicators for the bull moving forward with the election year in the U.S. and a bunch of rate cuts coming and things that typically affect the market. So it'll be exciting to see how it all plays out. But I'm most excited to see some of our best games that have been kind of in our back pocket for a while launching over the next 6 to 12 months and being able to tell the story to the rest of the games industry that Web3 matters.
Yeah. If you want to come back and talk about those games when you can, I'd love to hear about them and, you guys, when you can disclose that stuff.